Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this post-spring break Monday. I am Marchette Turner, Director of the Minority Business Development Agency here in Houston, and I am super excited about what my MBDA Amplified team has prepared for you. This 10-week Small Business Academy is twofold. First, we want to provide you as small or startup businesses with the one-on-one business training and coaching you need to further grow and develop your business. And secondly, we want to help you to eventually obtain government contracts that have proven to be very lucrative to firms who were once exactly where you are today. So don't fret, we are indeed preparing you for greatness. This webinar series will be recorded and you can view it on our YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. After my team presents today's webinar, we'll open it up for Q&A, at which time you can ask the burning questions that I know you have after our presenters present. So let me take a moment to highlight just some of what you'll hear during this 10-week Small Business Academy. So of course, we're talking about, the principles of the entrepreneurial mindset, certification, you name it, we're talking about it during this 10 weeks. And let me remind you again that everyone who attends for the entire 10 weeks will be invited to an in-person session at our administrative building of Houston Community College for a certificate ceremony, where you will receive a certificate from myself, and then we'll have light refreshments, and you can actually talk one-on-one with our two business trainers, Ms. Joni Hall and Mr. Austin Tannett. So again, you want to make sure that you attend these sessions in their entirety. They're 10-week sessions every other Monday. So on the Mondays that we don't meet, you can certainly reach out to Ms. Hall and Mr. Tannett via email and get information on your business, and you can have, business chats and conversations with them, and just to move you forward. So having said all of that, of course, I want to acknowledge all of my team members on the call today. And of course, they are Ms. Jessica Vasquez, our program coordinator, Ms. Tanya McGilbra, our business advisor, and of course, Ms. Joni Hall and Mr. Austin Tannett. So I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Joni Hall.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Director Turner. As always, it's a pleasure. My name is Joni Hall. I am one of the business trainers here at HCC with the MBDA. I work with networking with small businesses, providing training on creating a winning capability statement, which that is coming up in 2 weeks. So be ready, because I have some great stuff for you guys. And then also business matchmaker. By partnering clients with established strategic partners. So again, at the end, I will elaborate on our business hours and how we can help you and make that connection when Mr. Tannett finishes his part of the presentation. Mr. Tannett.
Ms. Hall, thank you so much. Next slide, please. Thank you so much, and thank you, Director Turner, for the great introduction there. So just by way of introduction, quickly, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a business advisor to the MBDA as well, and partner with Ms. Hall closely. When I'm not collaborating with MBDA, I serve with the Houston Community College's Entrepreneur in Residence, and then my day job is Executive Leadership and Growth Coach for working with small businesses and larger organizations on helping them to get to achieve the next level of exceptional performance. In another life, I was a corporate strategist and a business unit leader. In the last job, I had about 1,700 employees on my team. Next slide, please. So what we're going to talk about is navigating the certification process. So not sure what your current understanding is of the certification process, but as we get into it, you'll see that it's not nearly as daunting as you might have led to believe. But just a quick briefing on the history of certification. I think that what we've been able to unearth is that certain organizations 10, 20, 30 years ago came to realize that certain members of the business community were not participating fairly in major procurements that governmental entities and large organizations were executing. And so they the collective minds got together and they developed a series of different of certification process that created opportunities for primarily for women and people of color. And so what you'll see in the slides that follow, you'll see a variety of there's many different types of certification. Some certification may move easily across multiple organizations, while some organizations they only recognize a specific certification. So again, don't let the word certification be a scary thought, because really, as you'll see in the future slides, you'll see it's just sort of you as a business owner collecting a series of documents and making some assessments about your capability as a business owner to create some comfort that you belong to a specific group, whether it be female, people of color, veterans, disabled, so on and so forth, that particular entity is looking for. And so the certification process itself is just more of a paperwork exercise. And then as Ms. Hall talked about earlier, probably the most creative part of the process is when you deliver your capability statement, and we'll talk about that more in depth in a couple of weeks. So why is it that we want to become certified? So think of a sea of black umbrellas, and think of yourself with your certification as that one yellow umbrella in that sea of black umbrellas. Certification helps you as a business owner to stand out, and it helps you to create some awareness and recognition of your business amongst the many hundreds or thousands of potential competitors that you might have when approaching a particular governmental entity or agency. Next slide, please. And so again, benefits of certification, it gives you that opportunity or that edge with the key stakeholders. And more specifically, when we talk key stakeholders, these are the people that are able to say yes to the bid or proposal that you're making. Creates marketing awareness, sometimes with certain certifications, because now you're part of the chosen few. You have opportunities to engage in education and mentoring that's just for people who are either been certified or in the certification process. And as we know, to be a successful business owner, we've got to be committed to lifelong learning. And again, learning opportunities are absolutely critical, because the certification processes, like every other process in life, continue to evolve and change to address the current business climate or business needs. So as being certified with a particular entity or agency, you'll have a first shot at what those new requirements and opportunities are. Next slide, please. So we like to clear up what certification is not. As we can see here, it's not a guarantee of business. I often like to refer to the certification as a fishing license. It allows you to enter the calm waters, but you still got to drop a line in the water to catch the fish. It doesn't guarantee you anything. It's not a substitute for lack of business experience. I cannot tell you, I'm sure everybody, all of the MBDA members have come across people who had multiple certifications, but they never had actually done any business. And so it's not a substitute for having actually done the specific business. And then it's not a protection from shoddy work. People who engage with certified business owners have a very high expectation that there's going to be some great high quality work that's provided, and so we can't hide behind their certification if we endeavor not to provide good service, great work to the buying agency or entity. Next slide, please.
Let me interject 1 second, Mr. Tanat.
Sure.
Somebody just said that you're echoing again, so can we please fix that? And then I also wanted to chime in to say, absolutely 100%, you are correct. Don't think that when you get certified that you are automatically gonna just see the windows of heaven open up and business, starts to come your way. Not only do you have to be prepared, but they are also looking for a level of expertise in certain areas. So while many corporations and agencies, particularly government agencies, require the certification, they're also looking for a track record, if you will. So they want to know that you've done business with other agencies and you've been successful, you've been timely, your costs are what they should be, so on and so forth. So there's a long litany of lists that a list of things that you should have along with the certification. So I'm glad that Mr. Tenet brought up the point about it not being a, oh, I'm certified, so now I get that kind of business, you know, idea.
Director Turner, thanks for that clarification. I think that's really important. And I think that's probably something we need to repeat, what we've been repeating throughout the series, because, you know, you got to do some work, right? It's not just showing up. You got to show up and you got to have your, you know, you got to have the scars of battle that you bring to the table when you're talking to a potential buyer of your products and or services. So that's great.
And then do you all still hear the echoing? Can you all raise your hand or send an emoji or something to let us know if you still hear the echoing?
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure. Okay, the echoing is gone. Okay, so
it's gone. Thank you so much, Ms. Kidd.
I wish I could tell you I did something unique to get rid of it, but I have no idea what's going on here. So must be spring break overhang. Okay, so the next question, as we sort of get into this, the whole concept of government contracting, we've got to be very, very clear about what it is we're selling, and then more specifically, we have to speak the language of government contracting. So if you see that first column, product or service, and when I ask you, hey, what business are you in? You know, the common responses are, I do office supplies, computer training, leadership training, automobile tires, and that's great to sort of get you started, but that's not what government contractors talk. They talk in terms of codes. So we have that first column there, the NAICS, or for short, NAICS code, which stands for the North America Industry Classification System. And so what it is, and this is, you know, all pretty much everything here is, you can find it via Google. But what it does is take that office supplies category and then it breaks it down into a code. So when you're looking for opportunities with agencies or entities, and or you're putting together your capability statement, you're going to talk about your business in terms of what NAICS codes you support, or that your business or product or service fall into. And so, of course, and then within the NIGP code, which stands for the National Institute of Government Purchasing. I think that echo has come back, right?
I don't hear it.
Yeah, I hear it on my end.
Yeah. Exactly, and Andrea said the echo did start again.
Yeah. So
Mr. Tenet, I have a suggestion.
What's
maybe that? If you try to, your bandwidth might be having some issues. Maybe if you try turning off your camera.
Okay,
that works.
I'll happy to do that. Well, people always tell me I have a face for radio, so I'm just going to prove it here yet again.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my God, it's gone.
Oh, okay.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
I don't hear the echo. Okay, great. Good idea. Okay. Very good. Okay, so now I hear the echo again. How about anybody who's not talking? Maybe if we all.
I was just about to say, let's everybody mute, except you, Austin.
Okay. Yes. All right, let's give it a shot again. Okay, so obviously the government, they have their own set of codes. As you can see that for the NAICS codes, it's 424120 for office supplies, but then the NIGP code or the government procurement entities, they have a separate numbering system. So this is going to be very, very important for all of us as we go down the path of contracting. Do we have our NAICS codes identified as well as our NIGP code? Because when the procuring entities publish their request for proposals or they're accepting bids, they're looking specifically for you to answer the questions around what are the NAICS codes that you participate in, or the NIGP codes. So very, 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 very important, but very, very simple to find. Again, all of these are just a Google search away. Next slide, please. And so now we want to talk a little bit about the government contracting hierarchy. So oftentimes, and this is to help us broaden our thinking about what government contracting is. And so probably the more challenging procurements to win, top down, are the federal, then the state, you have county, you have city, and school district, and then the industries. Now, oftentimes, school districts sometimes, and sometimes not always, in industry, sometimes certification is not required. Maybe the particular contracting entity has a desire to do business with underrepresented businesses, small businesses, that sort of thing, and they may not have a certification requirement. But the thing to remember is having a certification, it will never ever hurt you. It's always just a nice to have. And oftentimes, what we'll see when the school districts and maybe in the industry will ask you to register as a vendor, a lot of that information that you would have compiled for your certification process is going to be the same information that the school districts and industry will need or require as you endeavor to become a registered buyer on your way, and hopefully on your way to certification. So again, as we talked about, typically the federal procurements a little bit more, tend to be a little bit more challenging to achieve, because oftentimes you're competing against potentially a nationwide group of competitors. State procurements tend to be a little bit lower. And for those of you who are interested in working with state agencies, I'm going to give you a little information later on in the presentation about where you can go tomorrow to sort of begin to start rubbing elbows with people who are making decisions around state procurements, then county and city. And as you'll see a little bit later, our City of Houston has a great program in place that is very, very active in recruiting businesses, local businesses who are underrepresented. Next slide, please. But the key thing I want you to remember is, it's almost with anything in business, it's that of focus. So because what you saw on the previous slide were those various entities which represent probably hundreds of billions of dollars of spend, literally hundreds of billions of spend. And so the first response is, wow, there's lots of opportunity out there for me, and there absolutely is. But what we would suggest, recommend, is that particularly if you're just getting started, maybe identify 2 or 3 agencies at the state level, 2 or 3 agencies maybe at the city or county level, and focus on those 3. Because the reality of it is, some of those agencies can be prolific generators of, or all these agencies can be huge generators of opportunities. And it's the classic, don't let our eyes be bigger than our stomach, right? Because if you find yourself chasing 10, 15, 20 opportunities simultaneously, it'll be very challenging to do some of the fundamental or foundational work that's necessary to submitting a winning bid or winning a procurement. And at the end of the day, the key here, I think we should all have the same goal, and that is we want to be in a position to win these bids or these procurements, not just bid on the work. Because and as you'll see, as you ultimately, when you get into the queue and you're starting to receive bid opportunities from some of these entities, you'll see that sometimes they can be quite cumbersome and onerous in terms of going about completing them. Some could be as many 10, 15, 25 pages of responses that you'll need to do. So the point here is focus on 2 or 3 agencies that you'd like to work with based on where your expertise lies, that we talked about in an earlier slide, because it's all about focus and then positioning yourself to win. And we position ourselves to win by thinking very small or focused, as opposed to being broad. Because one of the things that when people go to evaluate your particularly your certification activities, if they see that you're working from A to Z in terms of products or services, I mean, it's easy to tell that you're not really, either not serious or you don't have a very focused business, because everything that shows up as a bid, it looks like an opportunity for your firm. So focus is absolutely mission critical. Next slide, please. And so as we talked about, and so I've got about eight or nine different types of certifications that are here from different granting organizations, but this is probably just the tip of the iceberg because there's so many organizations who have in their efforts to help, they either have created their own certification process for their organization, or they or there are specific certifications that they accept. So places where you can pursue the certification would be the City of Houston. Women's Business Enterprise is funded by the SBA. TxDOT has its own. The SBA 8A program, that's one of those, that's a governmental program that's usually sort of, typically is reserved for larger organizations who've been around a bit. And there's, X number of dollars or percentage of the procurement that's set aside for people who have qualified under the 8A. We have our local chapter of the Houston Minority Supplier Development Center. They assist people with the paperwork and getting them certified. And probably one of the best programs we here as Texans are available to is the statewide hub program. So we're able to become certified under the hub program, and then that allows you to submit bids and become certified to bid on a variety of statewide programs. And so, Houston, of course, we're fortunate living in Texas, one of the largest states in the United States. A lot of procurement spend, and pretty much all of these programs here, they have specific targets and goals of how they want to incorporate underutilized businesses, whether it be female, people of color, veterans, disabled people, into those programs. Metro does a good job as well. And then there's the South Central Texas Regional Certification Agency, which also offers a certification for a variety of members. So, so here's where it gets a little bit tricky. And this is where you've got to do a little bit of research. So as we talked about, our starting point is, what are we providing? And then we want to decide what agencies we would like to work with. And then from there is where you've got to do your homework, where you go onto their website and look typically under the procurement section, and then you look for what certifications they accept. Because oftentimes, if you have maybe a statewide hub certification, it may or may not be, there may or may not be reciprocity with some of the other organizations. So you may need a certification to do business with another entity. So this is where this is probably one of the more trickier parts, but it is pretty straightforward, because you can just go to the website of the procurement website for the agency, and to determine where they're what certifications that they are looking for. And then if you are very diligent, you can probably find 1, 2, maybe 3 certifications that'll give you that'll get you accepted into maybe 80 or 90% of those programs that look for certified vendors to participate. So before we go on, are there any questions or comments in the chat room? Okay, next slide, please. So when we talk about the elements of certification, what you'll find that even though the certification may have a different or unique name, the reality of it is that it's the information, probably 80 to 90% of the information is the same across the various different certifications. So they're obviously, because some of these tend to be have a racial or ethnicity component. There is you've got to make a certification or verification that of your ethnicity, citizenship, and then of course the ownership of the business. So typically, what these entities are looking for, that the group of people that they are trying to empower and enable, that they have at least a 51% ownership in the business. In addition to, there's got to be some demonstration that 51% owner is actively engaged and is truly making some business decision, not just solely in an ownership role. So you'll have to that bullet 2 there, business structure and identifying information. So they'll ask you just some key information that you probably already have in a file or file drawer or file cabinet somewhere. A capability statement is absolutely mission critical. Apps capabilities. His statement is the resume, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. The understanding of your legal situation, legal documents, business description. Again, as we talked about earlier, business responsibilities. Then you'll have to have your tax returns and your financials available. They want to, because people want to make sure that you are a viable and stable organization, and oftentimes the tax return and your financial statements are the best way to determine that. And and probably job one is first, before you get started pulling this information together, is either use the certification checklist that the certifying agency may have on their website, or go about or read the application first and then create a checklist for yourself. You're far better served in terms of efficiency and effectiveness if you first create the checklist and then pull all of the information together and then proceed to completing the application for certifications. So it just eliminates the stopping and starting that oftentimes will stretch out the time that it takes for you to complete the application. And then, of course, that by having it all in place at one time, it'll cut down on errors, and as importantly, that stack of information that you'll compile, it'll make it easier for you to apply for complementary certifications as well. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking about who do we want to collaborate with, these are some considerations for what certification is right for you. So one of the things is, what is it that you're endeavoring to provide based against the potential client needs. Sometimes all of the various certifications are different lengths: 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that sort of thing. So what is it that you're willing to commit to? And then, of course, you've got to ensure, as we talked about earlier, can you perform whatever it is that work that you're endeavored to bid on? Are you able to perform that, both from an operational aspect and financial aspect? So, not taking a shot at any particular business owner provider, but if your whole life has been around, let's say, doing outdoor landscaping, and then you're bidding on work that is indoor painting or wall treatments, you're going to have a disconnect between what you have stated is your operational expertise versus what it is that you're bidding on. So that will can run the risk of creating some potential conflict. And the other thing is you've got to be financially capable of doing the work. I think in some instances you can get so. This is just an easy way of saying, how will you get paid, and do you have enough financial reserves to accommodate their payment terms? Because some entities, particularly the federal government, they'll probably put you on once you perform the work, and it's done to their satisfaction. You may have to wait 30 to 60, maybe even 90 days to get paid. Whereas there are some agencies and entities that recognize the challenges that small business owners have from a financial perspective, and maybe they're turning their payments around in 5 to 7 days. So being really, really clear on what those payment terms are is absolutely mission critical. And then, of course, the other things that are important, oftentimes the contracting agencies will have certain insurance requirements or bonding requirements. I know that the MBDA does a lot of work here in Houston with contracting firms, and I know that the bonding capability and ability is absolutely mission critical. So if you're either not prepared or don't desire to bond or insure your enterprise at those of which sometimes can be some very, very steep levels, you may want to give a second thought to that particular certification and or the types of contracts or opportunities that you bid on. Then, of course, you want to be conscious of the renewal terms, and then whatever processing fees that that may be appropriate with that. Director Turner, anything you'd like to add to that? Because I know you've seen a lot of probably in your days, you've seen some people who have had all the capabilities, but maybe that operational or that maybe more importantly, the financial piece was maybe a burden or hurdle that they couldn't overcome.
Absolutely. And I think you hit it on the head. There are, many considerations to be made, but we have to be mindful that, when you are becoming certified, and if you, again, don't have all your ducks in a row, if you are missing any components, if you are missing the capability statement that we talked about, if you are, you don't have a track record of doing business with other entities, agencies, or organizations, all of those are impediments, and they very quickly slow up the process. So you just want to make sure that you are completely 100% above board when you are going for these certifications, and making sure that you have everything you need so that it's a smooth process in terms of the initial certification and certainly for the renewal. Because keep in mind that the renewal process for certifications is not just, oh, it's been 12 months, so let me renew Marchette Turner Enterprises. That's not how it works. You still have to submit paperwork and so on and so forth. So just be mindful of that as well.
Okay, thank you, Director. That's very, very helpful. Appreciate that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and so here's some of the application elements. We'll get into a little bit more detail here, but from a legal perspective, here's the things that the typical application is looking for that. No matter whether it's a MBE, Minority Business Enterprise, Women's Business Enterprise, here's kind of the basis of looking for. Things about your business formation, what type of entity you formed, the EIN, employee identification number, is that in place? Your DUNS number, which is the data universal numbering system. I'm told that is probably not as popular as it once was to include in some of your documents, but it never hurts to have that with you. And then, as we talked about earlier, being able to speak clearly about the NAICS and NIGP codes that you're supporting. Next slide, please. We talked about this earlier in terms of financial elements, having your returns. And so if for those of you on the call who might be a year or two behind in your tax returns, this is a great time to get caught up. And then for those who have ongoing businesses, then having a balance sheet, income statement, and statement of cash flow, very, very important to have, because it's a great demonstration that you are serious about how you operate your business, and you've taken the appropriate steps to make sure that you've got the basic financial statements in place so people can evaluate the financial health of your business. Next slide, please.
And keep in mind, I'm sorry, Mr. Jeanette, keep in mind, this is probably the most important element of you becoming certified, this screen right here, because it tells the certifying entity that you are prepared for certification. As we talked about earlier, there are different types of certifications, and so each one of them requires a little something different. But this application elements screen, this is the most important because it tells each entity that you are financially ready to become certified with their agency. So just keep that in mind.
Very, very, very powerful. Thank you, Director. Next slide, please. And then, of course, there's some other operational things, understanding what your office lease looks like, of course, the lease agreement. And then, of course, the lease agreement is maybe not just on the building or brick and mortar location, but it could be a lease or purchase agreement for the equipment that you have to support a particular bid opportunity. Because if, let's say, I'm going to make this up, let's say you hold yourself out as a dirt mover in the construction space. Well, I think there's probably an expectation that you're going to have a list of dirt moving equipment, trucks and loaders and tractors and so on and so forth. So I think the ability, or at least have access to that. but your inability to demonstrate that you have access or you own or have a legal right to those pieces of equipment could be that could be held potentially held against you because you're not fit for duty, right? So those are all things to be thought of. And the flip side is that if you're running some sort of more of a consulting practice or something like that, there might be an expectation that you would have licenses to certain pieces of software and access to certain databases and that sort of thing. And so this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you have access or have bought a subscription to those particular offerings so that you're again ready and fit for duty. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit, Dr. Turner talked a little bit about some of the common mistakes that people often make. And so, and these are just, very, very common, but not understanding your legal documents, the time to get certified. The certifying agencies are all over the board when it comes to how long. Some could be long as 4 to 6 months. Some can be accelerated and go a lot faster. But the thing is don't give yourself enough time to collect the information and get it into the agency, and then work with the agency to understand what the expectations are around timing and turnaround. But I think that probably bullet number 3, not gathering all of your docs first, is probably the biggest challenge. Because as I look through the checklist, all the documents are it's pretty straightforward, but having them all in one place or in a format that you can easily share them with the certifying agency, that could be a bit of a challenge. So obviously very, very important to start there with it, as we said before, using checklists. And then as I talked briefly before, if your certifications not aligned with your social media presence messaging, could create some disconnect. As we talked about earlier, if all you've ever done is outdoor landscaping, now all of us and your social media reflects that. Now all of a sudden you're bidding on maybe a furniture contract or interior painting. You've got a mismatch between what's on your social media that's branding your business versus what it is that you're working on in terms of this particular procurement. Not saying that it's impossible, but you're creating another hurdle for your business because there's not a sort of a natural interchange between a landscaper and somebody who installs furniture. Inaccurate information, as we talked about before, and then of course using the incorrect NAICS and NAGIP codes. Anything you'd like to add to that, Director, based on your experience working with in this space?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. Yes. So one of the most common mistakes is bullet number 1. So not understanding your legal documents or your legal structure. A lot of people say, again, Marchette Turner Enterprises, Marchette Turner LLC, Marchette Turner S Corporation. So whatever it is you choose for your company name to be, number 1, be consistent with that. But number 2, know what that is. Many people will, start a business and again, they call it Marchette Turner LLC. Well, when I'm completing my legal documents, excuse me, I say Marchette Turner, the nonprofit. Those are 2 different types of legal structures. And so you have to be mindful of what structure your business falls under. I cannot tell you or impress upon you the importance of this. That's why it's imperative that every small business owner, every business owner, period, has an attorney, because they will catch those mistakes and then you won't be bound to something you wrote on a piece of paper and didn't realize you wrote it. So again, every business needs an attorney, and please, please, please know your legal status, know how you named your business at the very beginning, and be consistent with using that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to that.
That's very helpful. I appreciate you driving home the importance of of having an appropriate and proper legal structure that's been vetted by, and I'm going to say it, not an attorney, but a good attorney.
Business
Who
attorney.
focuses
Yeah.
on business attorney. I mean,
Yep.
your personal injury cousin may not be the best person to use for something as important as getting your business documents in order. So appreciate you sharing that. Next slide, please. And so then, so again, as we said earlier, certification is the beginning of the journey, but it's not the end all be all, because now we've got to go out and market the enterprise. So ways that we can do that for many of us on this call, maybe our first opportunity to leverage our certification is working with a prime contractor, and we end up being a subcontractor to that particular prime, because oftentimes the prime might be a majority organization, and but the contracting agency may have tasked the prime with making X% of that procurement available to underutilized businesses. So it's like any sort of relationship building activity. People want to work with those people that they know, like, and trust, and so there's a huge opportunity to get to meet primes and connect with them. Because I think not the sidebar for a moment, but one of the signature MBDA programs is their subs and sandwiches program, where the agency is actively putting together subs with primes who put their hand up and says, yes, we want to actively include disadvantaged businesses in the major projects that are underway. Great ways to attend pre-bid meetings, because if this is your first time with government contracting, I mean, let's just face it, it's a different terminology, it's a different language, different definitions. So attending the pre-bid meetings to do two things: to one, listen for what people are looking for, looking to acquire; two, to understand the terminology that's being used in those meetings; and three, it's a great place to meet the primes or people that you can potentially partner with. And so in that same vein, bullet number 3, identifying joint venture opportunities. Those pre-bid meetings are great ways to identify joint ventures where you can partner up with somebody else to deliver against a particular bid. And then, of course, the whole thing of marketing your certification. Again, the certification is merely a fishing license. You got to have to actively drop those lines in the water to create opportunities, or to advance opportunities that you've identified that might be right for your enterprise. Next slide, please. And then, so again, in the realm of marketing your certification, some of the key players that you'll run into along the way inside of the organizations, or particularly the government organizations, are your small business liaison officer, contracting officer, the buyer, and the ultimate project manager. Now, they're all called something different in different agencies and different organizations, and that sort of thing. And then that should be part of your homework, to figure out for the 1 or 2, 3 agencies that you plan to deal with, who are the key stakeholders and who are the people that have the potential to advance your candidacy forward as you seek to make win procurements in their particular agency. So this is generically what they're called, probably more like in a federal government space, but I assure you that all of the other agencies have either the same or similarly titled or role-based positions that participate in this. Next slide, please. And this is why it's so important to get out, meet people, and understand and ask the question. So who makes a decision, or what's the process for bringing in an underutilized business who's certified with such and such certification? And then sharing your accomplishments, absolutely mission critical. We encourage that you put the certifications you've achieved on all of your marketing collateral, whether it be hard copy or virtual. If trade shows are a way that you've chosen to market your business, particularly if it's it's a situation where there's going to be a lot of government buyers there, feel very, very free. We encourage you to advertise that at the trade shows, and then, of course, on all of your documentation, your email signature, your blog posts, make your linkages back to the certifying agency that you're connected to. Next slide, please. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but one of the most important things that you'll do in this process is put together a capability statement. And Joni, you're going to be delivering that presentation in a couple of weeks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Good deal. So you're in for a real treat. But basically, think of the capability statement as your company's resume. So we'll teach or show or demonstrate how you put together all of this information that we've been talking about here today into a 1 or 2 pager that serves as your business's resume. Next slide, please. Resources and education. So those of us, for the fortunate few that obtain their certification, oftentimes there's certain organizations that'll make certified specific education and resources available. I know for a fact that the Metro and Port of Houston, they have some special training that they do to encourage people to continue in the process. In fact, it's open to pretty much everybody, not just the people that have the certification. There's a number. Houston's such a large city. There are a number of Meet the Buyer organizations, events that happen around the city on a monthly basis. I was talking with some folks in the office, and then they said they shared with me that the Harris Health System, they had a Meet the Buyer event a few weeks ago where at one of the hospitals that's about to embark on a large scale investment in that particular facility. For those of you who are able, I would strongly recommend that you attend the Greater Houston Procurement Forum breakfast that is tomorrow morning, and it's doing business with our state of Texas agencies and institutions. Texas has just done some unbelievably great things to open the doors to folks like us that are on the Zoom call today about how about going doing business with the various agencies. So representatives from the agencies will be there. So this will be just a great time, even though you may not have your checklist completed of all the things you need, but just to go and have some conversations and say, hey, here's what I do. What does your agency use the type of goods and services that I provide? And if not, do you know of a sister or brother agency that does this? So this is just a great way to just have conversation with people. Again, get to learn the lingo and continue to position yourself, because even though they're, we shouldn't think of these people as government workers. We should think of them as people, and people do work with people who they know, like, and trust. And this is a great way to get started. Next slide, please. And so, quick summary, and then we'll move into questions. Is things to keep top of mind. Again, we talked about focus. What agencies will you work with? Then being very clear on what it is you will offer, not just the description, but being able to translate the description from what you do into the NAICS codes and the NIGP codes. What certification does the agencies that you choose to work with, what do they accept? What do they recognize? Then, of course, you got to complete the certification application, giving yourself ample time. And then we talked about marketing your certification. Your certificates cannot be the world's best kept secret. Creating awareness is absolutely mission critical for all of us. And then we talked about building the right relationships. We talked about that list of people that are typically involved in the decision-making process, the project managers, contracting officers. So figure out for the agencies that you work with, what does that hierarchy look like? And then make a commitment to yourself that you'll get to do some outreach to them. You get to meet them so that they'll know you as something more than just a name on a piece of paper. And then, of course, maintain your pipeline of activities. And so this is the balance we've got to all have to strike. It's impossible to bid on everything, but I don't want you to bid on 1 or 2 things and hoping that they'll come through, particularly at the beginning. So it's always very important to have a pipeline of activities, maybe a handful of opportunities that you're bidding on, as well as a handful of opportunities that are agencies that at some point in the future you'd like to do business with, because probably one of the few guarantees that we can make is that you probably won't win the first one or two opportunities that you bid on. So you want to have more in place to make things happen. Okay. All right. So that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to maybe we come off of the slide, and then we're going to Q&A. I'm sorry. Before I do that, Joni, I want to turn it over to you to talk about kind of what's coming next before we go to Q&A.
All right, awesome. Okay, so we do have office hours. Following the presentation, we do have office hours on Wednesday and the following Monday. If you guys would like for myself and Mr. Tennant to reach out, what we do, we start as kind of like we are today, talking to as a group. We decipher what your need is and how we need to schedule out to help you effectively. So if you could go ahead and email myself and CC Mr. Tennant, so we will make sure that between the two of us that we are contacting you back. You'll see mine is Joni.Hall at ACC s.edu, and then you have Austin.Tennant at ACC s.edu. We prefer emails more so than phone calls because we move around offices and we do a lot of virtual FaceTime. So that's the method in contacting us. But you can provide a phone number if you're more comfortable with us reaching out to you via the phone. That is not off the table as well. We just have to have a phone number so we can contact you and make that appointment for those office hours. So again, email both of us and we set up appointment times for Wednesdays and Mondays. Typically Wednesday we'll go into the office and we will be able to schedule out your time for the following Monday and in moving forward. And so, okay. Mr. Tennant, I think that will do it for us. We will have, not this week, but the following week, we will have the next webinar will be the winning capability statement, which I will be covering that information. So it is awesome if you do have a capability statement and you would like to share and email that to us. We will be glad to review that prior to, so you can kind of have an idea if you're on point or if the little work needs to be done. So we like to be proactive. So if you would like your capability statement review before we move into that workshop, we have no problem with doing that as well. Okay, Mr. Tennant, turning it back over to you.
Very good, thank you. And then Jessica, a question for you is, a couple of people asked about the registration information for the event tomorrow. If I email you the event information, can you forward it to the folks that were on the call here this morning?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
can do that. Mm-hmm.
I'll do that as soon as I hang up.
Okay, mm-hmm. Sounds good.
And then, unfortunately, we're kind of at time. Maybe we had time for maybe one quick question that came up.
Yes, Miss Tanya, do you see anyone? Do you see any questions?
I see a question here that looks as if it's a legal question. I started my business as a LLC. Last year, we applied to become taxed as a S Corp, and it was approved via the IRS. Do we apply as a LLC or corporation?
Okay, so yeah, I don't want to hazard I would be guessing, but I would think that you would apply. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm a recovering CPA, but it's been a long time since I've had that. So I would suggest that either go back to the IRS and ask that, or find somebody, find an attorney that can help you with that situation, because sometimes the way you're formed legally and how you're taxed, it can be two different designations, and that's kind of what it looks like here. So I would talk to a CPA and or a business attorney to get clarification on that situation.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure, certainly.
Austin, can you provide any common identifiers to avoid when looking to secure certifications? Example, scams, cost, etc.
Yeah, so that's a great question, because we this is America, and we're all on the internet, so there's lots of scammers out there. And then there's some people who who do provide a viable service, but as I mentioned earlier, this is pretty straightforward. This information that you've got to compile to complete the certification process. And so what I would do is I would pull go find what certification you want to apply for, pull down the checklist or create your own checklist, and then make a determination: am I capable of pulling this information together
Building.
by myself? And if not, where do I need help? And then come back to some place like the MBDA, maybe even SBDC, and then ask for help or assistance in pulling it all together.
Buildings.
Because again, some of it's pretty straightforward. But if you have business demands that keep you from staying focused and pulled together, then certainly I would reach out and try to find somebody that for some assistance, and then we can between the couple of different entities that we interact with, we can find I recommend 1, 2, or 3 resources that could be a resource to you. But I'm just always suspect of anybody that kind of cold calls me off the web or about their capability.
And I think it showed up. I copied and pasted information for some, free legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you are offered 1 hour of free legal advice. So if there are any small businesses out there who are looking for specific questions related to the one you posted earlier, try them out.
That's great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think we're going to conclude the webinar because it's 11:05 already. So on behalf of Director Turner, I wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar. And please don't forget to register for our next webinar that is going to be on Monday, April 3rd, Building Your Capabilities Statement. So before we wrap up, I was wondering, Mr. Austin, Ms. Johnny, do you want to say any final remarks?
Ms. Hall, please, ladies first.
No, I don't. Just looking forward to moving through the academy with everyone. I'm looking forward to answering those individualized questions during our office hours. And again, we appreciate your attendance today.
And I'm just going to echo what Ms. Hall stated. And then again, the worst thing that you can do in the city of Houston is not take advantage of the dozens of pro bono services that are out there. So I'm going to leave it at that. So we're here to help and assist, and it's little or no charge to you. So please take advantage of what it is we're providing to our business ecosystem.